Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. That was our opening presentation brought to you by the BBPA. Today, I would like to welcome you all to another program brought to you by the Black Business Professional Association, the BBPA, which continues to seek to support our community and our businesses. I'm your host, Anton James. I'm a marketing strategy consultant and an event host. The program today of the BBPA is part of the Level Up program, a finance and funding masterclass for Black-led businesses. We are in the second.
And
you've been muted.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. Welcome to another program brought to you by the Black Business Professional Association, which continues to seek to support our community and businesses. I'm your host, Anton James. I'm a marketing strategy consultant. And together, the program today put on by the BBPA is a Level Up program, a finance and funding masterclass for Black-led businesses. We are in the second of the 13-week program spanning from January 19th to April 13th. The program today will focus on understanding what's next in the monetary policy report from the Bank of Canada. I would like to start off by introducing everyone to our panelists. Okay, our panelists today. Our special guest today will be Paul Baudry from the Deputy Governor of the Bank of Canada, Michael Pinnock, the Treasurer of the BBPA, and Nadine Spencer, President of the BBPA. But before we jump right into the meat of it, I would like to ensure we cover some critical issues. First thing I'm going to do is do our land acknowledgement. The Black Business Professional Association, we recognize that we are on the traditional territory and of nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is now many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. The BBPA also acknowledges that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 signed with the Mississauga of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississauga and Chippewa bands. The next, I would like everyone to take a moment and take a look and acknowledge the BBPA's legal disclaimer. If you see it, should be on the screen coming now. And the ideas and the strategy discussed in this program are general in nature and should not be considered advice to any specific individual. They are designed to communicate basic information and to help participants understand the basics of topic presented. The materials neither purport nor intend to give financial, legal, or tax advice or earnings expectations. Nothing in the program should be considered investment or financial advice. For financial or other investment advice, you should seek the advice from your own trusted independent.
Hi there, Anton. Sorry, I believe there's a couple people that are in your chat room that aren't supposed to be on the call. Oh. Yeah, there's quite a bit of bickering going on over there if you want to just take a look.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that.
While Tanisha looks at, I'll continue the legal disclaimer as we continue to work that part out.
Okay.
Thank you so much for that feedback.
You're welcome.
So for financial or other investment advice, you should seek the advice from your trusted independent financial advisor and consult with a qualified advisor prior to acting with regards to ideas presented in this program. The opinions rendered in this program are those of the presenter and does not necessarily represent those of the BBPA, the RBC, HSBC, or the Donald Reed, or any of our other sponsors. And with that said, we also have a special disclaimer on behalf of the Bank of Canada. This session is a private and off the record. Following the Bank of Canada's principles for external communication, it will only contain the views that have already been communicated publicly. Please contact the Bank of Canada directly for any information requests. Now, bringing you greetings, we have the one and the only, our president, Nadine Spencer of the BBPA.
Thank you, Anton. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Nadine Spencer, as Anton says, president of the Black Business and Professional Association. As many of you may know, we are a 38-year-old organization working to address equity and create economic opportunities for Black businesses and professionals. I'm very thankful to our guests today, Paul Beaudry, Deputy Governor for the Bank of Canada. You're being here today to share with us. Your topic today is important because, when COVID started, we did a survey at the BBPA around looking at mainstream businesses versus Black businesses. And what we recognized was there was a gap, a huge gap in terms of access to capital and certain barriers. And what this program is about strengthening the Black business communities. And so part of that is financial literacy. And when we talk about level up, it is about looking at all of the resources, the understanding on certain financial perspectives that is going to help our businesses grow and be sustainable. So I thank you very much for being here. You have a wonderful moderator and host today, Anton, and Michael Pinnock, our treasurer. He's well accomplished and he's got great questions, and we're looking forward to the message you have to share. So thank you very much for being here. And everyone, welcome, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Nadine. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce my co-host today for today's program, Michael G. Pinnock. Michael G. Pinnock is an FCPA, an FCA, a GCMA, and also has an MBA and a Bachelor of Science. A fellow chartered professional accountant, an FCPA, currently the principal of his firm with licenses to practice public accounting in Canada, US, and Jamaica. Michael has distinguished himself as an astute accountant providing assurance and consultancy services to organizations and businesses both locally and internationally. He has built a solid, consistent relationship with his clients and offered timely, valuable, and practical solutions to their business needs. A native of Jamaica, Michael immigrated to Canada in 2002. He spent his first initial 10 years with York Region in its corporate finance department, where, as a senior budget advisor, he played pivotal roles in supporting a number of initiatives as a subject matter expert. A firm believer in giving back and a consummate volunteer, Michael's hobbies is watching science fiction movies and spending time with his grandchildren. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to give you Michael Pinnock. As Michael continues to come forward, I would also like
Michael, you're on mute.
Oh, there he is.
Sorry, thanks, Anton. And thanks to those folks who've signed up on the dot of 2 o'clock to be part of this program. We have different challenges, just having this program, if you were to look at the chat, you'll see, some of the challenges we have, but we'll persevere. My approach, as Anton said, I'm the treasurer for the Black Business and Professional Association, and we're running this 13-week program. And I would like to put the program, this particular one, today in context, so we understand, for example, why we have got the Bank of Canada here to talk about the economy. So as we start a new business, or we try to sustain an existing business, grow that business, or scale that business, it's important for us to consider as many factors as possible that could have an impact on what we do. In particular, we talk about the political environment, we talk about the economic environment, we talk about the social, technological, legal and regulatory, and the environment itself. These are areas that you want to explore to ensure that the challenges and the opportunities that are available, they are considered during the planning stage. And so today's program fits in the economic part of that planning process. And we'll see, we'll explore the economic factors through the eyes of the Bank of Canada, which I think is probably in the best or the most suited position to guide us as to what's happening. Before I do that though, we're gonna run a poll, and the idea is it's internal. We're trying to gather data so we can improve the programs as we deliver them. So we're gonna do an internal poll at the start to assess people's knowledge, etc. And then we'll run a similar poll at the end of this program to see to what extent Paul and myself have made a difference in your understanding some of the factors that will impact your business as you plan. And hope we all enjoy this session, and I certainly look forward to Paul's presentation. So after the poll, we'll proceed directly into what we have to do. And thanks for having me. So Tanisha, we should be running the first poll.
Hi, Michael. We're going to have to move on beyond that one.
All right, so we'll come back to that later, whenever we have a natural break. So Anthony,
Thank you very much for that, Michael. So with that, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our special speaker today, Paul Baudry. Paul Baudry was appointed Deputy Governor of the Bank of Canada effective February 2019. In this capacity, he is one of 2 deputy governors responsible for overseeing the bank's analysis and activities in promoting stable and efficient financial systems. As a member of the Bank of Governing Council, he shares responsibilities for decisions with respect to monetary policy and financial system stability, and for setting strategic direction of the bank. At the time of his appointment to the Bank of Canada, Mr. Baudry was a professor at the University of British Columbia, Vancouver School of Economics. Mr. Baudry began his career as an assistant professor at the Université de Montréal in 1989. From 1990 to 1994, he was an assistant professor at Boston University. In 1994, he became an associate professor at the University of British Columbia before he was promoted to a full professor in 1996. During 2009 and 2010, Mr. Baudry held the chair of economics at the All Souls College, Oxford University. Mr. Baudry is a 2-time former laureate of the Bank of Canada's Research Fellowship Award. He is a fellow of the Royal Society of Canada and a research associate at the National Bureau of Economic Research.
Listen, I have disabled the chat, so nobody can leave a message in the chat.
Can somebody please mute the mic, please? Thank you. He has been a visiting professor at the European University Institute, MIT, Nuffield College of Oxford University, Sorbonne, Paris, and the University de Montréal, and the University of Toulouse. Recognition of his works include the Canada Research Chair in Macroeconomics 2000 to 2015, and the John Ray Prize for the Canadian Economics Association in 2008. Born in Montreal, Quebec, Mr. Baudry holds a B in Economics from Laval University, a Master's in Economics from the University of British Columbia, and a PhD in Economics from Princeton University. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to give you Paul Baudry.
Thank you so much, Anton, for that introduction. Let me try to share my screen now. Host disabled participant screen sharing. And I guess I'd need a non-disabled if we're going to share the screen, but while I'm waiting for that, unmute. Okay, I don't know. Okay, now, were you hearing me a second ago?
You should be able to go ahead.
Okay.
You're not. Yes.
Okay, host disable the participation screen sharing. Okay. I was going to share my screen, but there seems to be a bit of a problem. Anyways, I don't know if I don't know exactly. Did you hear? Maybe just if you can nod, Anton. Did you hear my first comments? I don't want to repeat myself for nothing, or haven't you heard anything yet?
Hi, Paul. Sorry, it looks like you're not a co-host yet, which is why you're not able to share your screen.
Okay.
Nadine,
Well, he is a co-host. He is a co-host. Nadine, you
There you go, Paul. You should be able to share now.
Okay. Okay. Share. Let's see if this.
Thank you.
Now, this wasn't me. I don't know how I got this on this, this screen. Obviously, this doesn't make any sense. I don't know how someone's got onto this. How someone is, anyways.
Let us.
Is there something? I mean, this is very.
I'll tell you what, Paul, as we're trying to figure out what's going on, I see we've had some challenges.
Okay, so I was muted again. Yeah, I'm very, in some sense, seeing this reality of the type of things that you have to endure is actually a learning experience for me. So I'm kind of you know, it's a good thing to kind of see from the outside, to kind of see some of the challenges. While we're waiting, maybe I can give a little bit of background and things as other things are being fixed up. I take it that you do hear me right now, Anton?
We can hear you. We can hear you. And to the audience out there, we do apologize for the interruption. Clearly, we have some unwanted guests that are trying to stop our progression, but we are insisting on going forward anyways. So, Paul, we do hear you. We're looking forward to your information, and please, by all means, go ahead and share.
Okay. While we're waiting for the slide presentation, let me say a bit about monetary policy and giving you a bit of a background of how it works. Some of you probably know some of the things I'll say, but many of you probably don't. So at the Bank of Canada, we're in charge with monetary policy, which includes setting the basic interest rates, so the very, very short-term interest rates, which generally affect interest rates all through the banking system and lending and borrowing in general in Canada. And we set that basically every 6 weeks. So we do that 8 times a year. And 4 times a year.
Okay, I can do it now. Okay. Okay.
And 4 times a year, we actually go out and prepare what we call this monetary policy report, which we share with everyone, trying to give them an idea of how we're seeing the economy and to try to use that to explain why we take certain decisions. Because in some sense, you could say, well, why don't we just always set interest rates as low as possible? Well, we're trying to kind of figure out a way of bringing the economy up to its maximum employment all the time. That's what we'd like to do, but we try not to overheat the economy and create inflation. That's basically the type of trade-off we face at the Bank of Canada. And so we're always following the economy and trying to figure out what would be the best monetary policy at this point in time. Obviously, times like this with COVID are particular crisis times, and I'll come back to that. That's been a big constraint for us, figuring out how to do things. And it has pushed us to do what's considered like non-traditional monetary policy. So usually we just set this very short-term interest rate. And what happened at the beginning of COVID, the crisis was very important, and we wanted to have people have access to credit. This is in particular, a lot of you are business people and might have needed credit during this crisis, and we decided to lower our interest rates basically as low as we could, which we put them down to 0.25%. That's pretty much, you kind of think of where you'd want to go without going negative, and 1/4 was close enough to negative that we decided to stop there. So we actually lowered interest rates right at the beginning of this crisis to have very low interest rates. And then we still wanted to help the system. And we've been doing something that's called quantitative easing since then. So we've been going out and buying government bonds, so longer term bonds on the market, trying to influence other rates that are further out, like the 5-year rates, 10-year rates, and influencing them by some of our purchases. Okay, so we're back to the report here. Maybe I can get the.
I'll actually move from my side there, Paul, if that's okay. Where are you on here?
Let's go back to the first. So I was just giving background right now. Okay, so that's all good. So I was giving you a bit of background on what is the monetary policy report. Like I said, it kind of comes out 4 times a year, and it's really to give you an idea of how we see the economy. And I'll be going through the steps we'll kind of start with the global economy and then going to Canada, and then explaining our policy decision and kind of putting that in perspective. So if I go to the next slide. So right now, just to give you the general big theme is nothing that you won't know is for us at the Bank of Canada is really this is an environment where we're between two forces. In the short run, things have worsened in Canada, obviously with all the containment measures. A lot of businesses have been closed, schools have been kind of cut and different things. But at the same time, we've had vaccines arrive. And that's kind of made it that in the more medium term, kind of looking down to the second part of the year, actually things look a lot better and kind of going into next year. So this is the general message here, is really two opposing forces as we see the economy. So let me start with the global economy. So if we go to the next slide or 2 slides down. Yeah, okay. The interesting thing is what's been happening over this COVID period. So obviously when COVID kind of started back in March and April last year, really things contracted very quickly, and then things picked back up in the summer and as the economy kind of picked up. And what's really been the thing that's happened to us as a central bank and most other central banks is a little bit we've been behind the curve. Things have been coming back faster than we thought. And these graphs here in particular are kind of giving some of that numerical values to that. If we look, this is for the world in general, okay? And if we look at that left-hand side panel, so if I take the first line, for example, in 2020, the black dot is actually where we thought growth was going to be for the whole year in 2020. It's kind of like in the world level at -4%. And actually it's come out at about -3% instead. So it's actually been better than we kind of were projecting. And one of the parts is really the resilience of the business community, is how much businesses have figured out how to do things even in COVID. And this is not just in Canada, this is the world data, but it's certainly true also in Canada. And with that, we've been revising our views on the world economy and how it's going to be doing better. So if I look at this, still just focusing on that same graph there, that left-hand graph. The blue line is now, we're predicting for the world economy, almost 6% growth next year. That's right. And the black line was where we were before in October, and our last report was about 5%. So this is the general feeling. And a lot of that is coming from all sorts of parts in the world. The US is doing better than we thought, which is important for us as it's a big exporter. And the emerging markets are also a big part. So we actually thought for a while that the emerging markets would have a big difficulty. And again, COVID has had less of an impact than we actually predicted. So the general aspect here in the growth, even despite the second wave right now we're going through, in general, our view for the world economy is last year was probably a little bit less bad than we kind of expected. And the future looks a bit better, especially going into next year, the following year. Now, if I go to the next slide, for a lot of businesses, this is an important thing, is trying to follow the Canadian dollar. And one of the things that's happened through this crisis is, so the green line is actually our standard Canada-US rate. So let me concentrate on that one for a moment, just say a few words about the other ones there. I received a message to possibly restart my video when I have a moment. But you're seeing me and everything. I don't want to restart anything if everything's fine there, Anton. Is everything fine?
Yep. Please, yeah, continue going. We'll keep going.
Okay. Okay. Now that probably okay. So this green line is the Canadian US dollar, and what you can see is that at the beginning of the crisis, going back to March and April, on that graph, you see the depreciation, a very strong depreciation of the Canadian dollar that happened at that time. But since then, the Canadian dollar has been going up. And actually, it's kind of gone up now. It's actually a bit stronger than it was at the beginning of the crisis. And that's an extra challenge for a lot of exporting businesses, having a stronger Canadian dollar. But what's happening there, kind of the red compares of different things that would be happening with other countries at the same time. Most of this movement is not special to the Canadian dollar. It's really the US dollar has been depreciating since basically April last year. And you can kind of wonder, how come the American dollar kind of depreciated through that whole period? And this is the aspect of, as people have been, so when people get very kind of nervous, they buy American dollars. And that's really led to that appreciation at the beginning of COVID. And since then, people are getting more optimistic that we actually will have, coming out of COVID, actually quite a bit of growth. And they're getting out of the American dollar, and we've had appreciation there. So if I go to the following slide, other things that are important on the international scene is actually for us, especially in Canada, is we're a big exporter of a lot of commodities. And again, what happened in general in a lot of these commodities, the prices fell at the beginning of the crisis. So again, if we look in that kind of March, April period of last year, they fell a lot. And then they've been coming back. Most of them have been coming back quite strongly. The yellow line is actually the forest products. And we really see that that didn't fall too much and has come back quite strongly. And that's a big part of housing both in Canada and the US, that kind of brings in a lot of demand for forest products. The blue line is the base metals. So these are a lot of, so we've had a lot of sales of manufacturing goods during this crisis. A lot of us, we can't go out to restaurants, we can't go out to other things. And a lot of people have bought goods instead. And so there's been a lot of actually demands of kind of metals and things. And so the price of metals have been going up. Actually, a bit more surprising is even the agricultural products have gone up. That kind of relies a little bit on things that happened in China. And the red line is the price of crude oil, and it went down quite a bit. It's been coming up, but it's still lower than it was at the beginning of the crisis. And that explains some of the difficulties that in areas in Canada of the oil producing regions that are still being hit hard by this. So that's a little bit the picture I want to give from the international scene. Things have been difficult. It's been a bad year overall in the world, but a little bit less bad than we thought. And a large part of that is really resilience of people figuring out ways of living through COVID. So if I go to the next slide. So I'll be moving in the Canadian economy. So I'll begin by kind of saying how we see things now, and then I'll be telling you how we see kind of things going forward from here. So next slide, please. Okay. So the first thing, if I look on the right-hand side of this slide, we see these. This is a measure of the containment kind of or stringency index of the containment measures we have in Canada. So remember, they were really tight, kind of March, April last year. Then they kind of became easier over the summer, and now they're almost back in general as the average of all of Canada, almost at the same level as they were in last April. But what's interesting is people are doing a lot more things now with those same measures. So first of all, the economy is doing much more, but we kind of see it on the left-hand scale. So just putting things in perspective, if you look at the number of cases in Canada, it really is the first wave. Actually, we controlled it quite well, and it was just this little bump. That's that red line. We had cases in Canada that were there and everything in that first part. And now since October, we've really been in this second very bigger wave. But if you ask people how much they think it's risky to kind of go out and things, actually they feel it's a lot less risky now than they did back in April. And that's that blue line on that left-hand side, which is an index that said, we just ask people, where do you think it's safe? And it used to be that in the first wave, 75% of people thought the only place you're safe is staying home. And now that's down to 50%. So a lot of people have adapted a lot to the COVID situation, are feeling it's not as dangerous, even though the containment measures are kind of slowing things down. Next slide, please. Now, one of the big things that we know about this this situation, this crisis, this pandemic, is it's very unequal in the different types of businesses across sectors here. And so here I'm kind of graphing what's happened to the level of production in different industries in Canada. And again, you see kind of normalizing, kind of going back to that January, February period, and then seeing the kind of fall. Almost all sectors fell in that kind of February to April period. But really what fell enormously and what hasn't come back is really accommodations, foods, art, entertainment. Those are really the sectors that have been hit enormously. We look at other sectors, transportation's been hit quite a bit. Oil and gas have been hit. Other sectors, it becomes a lot less. Other sectors have kind of gone down. There was a big hit at the beginning, but they're almost back to where they were. So it's kind of remembering how much this is a crisis, that the effects of these crises are concentrated in certain industries. And again, here I'm guessing that the people part of this this call, several people probably have businesses that are tied to some of these areas that have been hit quite hard. Next slide, please. But it's not only across industries that's hit very unequally, it's very unequal in terms of the people it's hit, okay? So this is a crisis that's really hit low wage employment, okay? So if we look at that right-hand side graph, this is the level of employment. We're dividing the Canadian population just in two groups. So the red line is people earning $16 an hour or less, okay? And that's about kind of 20 to 25% of the population. I think it's 22% exactly. And the rest of the population. And looking at the employment levels among people that kind of earn $16 an hour or less and the rest of the population. Well, we really see that the people at the low end, employment fell drastically at the beginning, again in March and April, and then came back a bit in the summer, but it's been kind of stagnated there at about 20% lower than it was before the crisis. That's a big part. That's like saying 1 in 5 people have lost or kind of don't have their jobs there. While other people, so the rest of the population that earning more than $16 an hour, have actually had a hard time at the beginning of the crisis. Things went down, then they came back up, and the employment levels were actually back a bit before the crisis level, okay? So in that sense, most of the other kind of on average, again, we always have heterogeneity, so it's not a question that we can kind of say, everyone's like this, but this kind of gives this very divergent view among these two groups, is this aspect of low wage workers are extremely hit hard, other people not so bad. Again, there's variation in there, but just that kind of general picture. And that happens in the overall long run. The left-hand side was giving a bit of a more detailed story there and kind of giving some of the groups. But that's the big story there. Let me go to the next slide. Now, one of the things that we get worried the most, so this is the unemployment rate, and we can see that that unemployment rate had really picked up. So we got very high levels of unemployment in that first period, and then it's been coming down since that April part. There's still, more than 500,000. There's over 600,000 people that still haven't gotten back their jobs from this crisis. So it's still a big issue. But the issue we kind of worry the most, not the most, but really one that's important. The ones that are the most difficult is long-term unemployment. It's people that lose jobs and really have trouble finding a new one. If you lose a job, it's bad enough, but if you kind of find a new job within a month or 2 months, okay, it's hard, but it's kind of, it goes. We define long-term unemployment as the people that have lost jobs for more than kind of half a year. And what we see is that little red line. It doesn't look so low, but before this pandemic, there was about 1% of unemployed that we call this long-term unemployed people. Now that's moved to 2.5%, which is higher than kind of the recession that we had in 2010. It kind of goes back, if you can kind of go back to 2000, we haven't seen these heights of long-term unemployment, and that usually is really a difficult situation. These are people that lose their job. When you lose it a long time, you can't find employment. Often it becomes very difficult to get back into the labor market. This is the type of group we get very worried about seeing this. We keep a good eye on what's happening to long-term unemployment. So let me go to the next slide. So this is how the Bank of Canada works. Our mandate is to try to keep inflation. So on the monetary policy front, our mandate is to try to keep inflation close to 2%. So we try to adjust our decisions in terms of monetary policy and interest rates to keep that inflation close to 2%. The red line is a normal kind of measure of inflation. If you see before the crisis, we were very close to 2%. So we were kind of managing our job pretty well. The crisis happened and businesses closed. There was a lot of prices that fell and inflation has fallen below 2%. And so our job is to try to get inflation back there, not just because we care about inflation, because what it means is when you get inflation back to your target, usually the economy is working well. So our idea is to try to get the economy to work well, such that it gets us back to that target. So our idea is trying to push the economy these days to try to get it back to that aspect because it's not at this 2% rate level. Next slide, please. Okay, so now so that was kind of where we were and kind of what I was seeing. Things have kind of come back. We have the containment. This is the different parts right now are difficult. Like I said, there's lots of heterogeneity. But as we look forward, where do we see kind of things going?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so next slide, please. So I'm going to be kind of going into where we see, so our projection for the next few years. And again, here, if you look at the black line on this figure, the black line is the general production, the GDP for the whole economy. We see that very sharp drop at the beginning of 2000. And what I just want to compare is this second wave. If you look at that second vertical line there, those are the new containment measures in Canada. And you see the decline a little bit after that in that black line. It's just so small relative to the first time. So the first time we put in these containment measures, the economy really tanked. The second time it's gone down. We're seeing in this first quarter will be kind of going down at about 2%. But after that, by the second half of the year, as the vaccines kind of come out, we'll be on a trajectory to get back to where we were before. We expect that by the end of 2021, we'll be close to where we were before the pandemic. But really, to get everyone back to being employed and kind of looking at a situation that's more similar to where we were before the pandemic, we don't think that's going to happen until around 2023. The type of industries that are really kind of helping us in that, in kind of coming back through that pandemic. Well, the blue line is the one of, probably you've heard and seen things, is the housing market. As we reduce interest rates this way, and I kind of discussed early on, I kind of said, first thing we did at the beginning of the pandemic was really to reduce interest rates. That's really encouraged purchases of houses, and we really see housing demand. So that's that blue line in there. Government's also been a big help. They've kind of been pulling things up. And as we look, one of the bottom lines is business investment. And it's been one of the sluggish parts of kind of, and we're hoping and we're projecting, and our impression is talking to business people, and I'd be happy to get your input when we get to the question period, is that that's starting to be picking up. Again, there's lots of heterogeneity in businesses. There's the businesses that have been very strongly hit by the containment measures, and there's other businesses that actually haven't done that badly and been stayed open and actually managed to kind of accumulate quite a bit of cash during this period. And so when we're talking to businesses, we're getting two very, very different pictures. Some that are actually in pretty good shape, and some that are in really difficult shape. And so when we're kind of trying to aggregate and say something about business investment, we mustn't forget how different it is across different groups. Next slide, please. So one of the things that happened during this this crisis and this type of recession, which is very different than any other time, look at the blue line. This is disposable income. So this is income that people earn, like their salaries and business income, plus the transfers to the government minus taxes. And usually in a recession, our disposable income, so the income that we have to spend, actually goes down. But this is a case where the disposable income on average in Canada at the beginning of this, and has stayed above the pre-pandemic level, has been higher. And that really reflects the strong support programs by the government. Things like the CERB program, the CEBA program, different programs that have been helping and kind of putting money in people's pockets have kept the income of people on average actually better than what we were at the beginning of the pandemic. Now, again, there's lots of heterogeneity in there. So this is just on average. But at the same time, what's happened is people have, so the red line is actually how much people have been consuming. So people have gotten, on average, more income during this this pandemic and consumed less. And so they've been actually saving a lot. So on average, it says it's kind of a funny crisis where a lot of people, especially, and again, when I was dividing people before, low-income people in general haven't been doing very well. I kind of mentioned that. And higher income people have not only kind of done well, have managed to kind of save and actually be in a situation. So one of the reasons we think that things will pick up quite a bit during when the vaccine will come rolled out properly is that people have money to spend and that's one of the reasons we should have pickup going forward. Next slide, please. Now, again, this type of pickup going in is quite different across different sectors when we think of also in our export sector. So that's so you know, we export a lot to the U.S. The U.S. should be picking up very strongly. It was already kind of moving quite before. Now with the new Biden administration, things even look more positive, depending on, you know, these different stimulus programs they might get to put into the U.S. But the sector which has been kind of, again, lagging, which we call these export type sectors, is things like the tourism industry is kind of one of the big ones in Canada that's been lagging there, as opposed to kind of our commodity exports, which, like I said, a lot of the commodity prices are back to normal. Next slide, please. Again, here on investment, I mentioned earlier, we, you know, there's a lot of heterogeneity, but we do go around and ask. So we have a survey. So the left-hand panel here on this figure is actually data that we get from surveys that we conduct to business people across Canada. And some of you might have been addressed before in some of these surveys that we have this business outlook survey, and we ask different people how they feel about the possibility that they might be investing in their business in the upcoming months. And this the figure is kind of capturing the movement in there. You really see again that big fall at the beginning of 2000, where people were saying, "No, I'm actually going to retrench," and this is very negative in terms of my sentiment about business. But now it's really come back up, and that's why we're quite positive on the right-hand side. That's actually the profile for business investment that we're expecting to come back up. Again, reflecting that heterogeneity where some businesses are doing a lot better, but on average, we think a lot of businesses should be kind of coming back up as we get the vaccines rolled out. The exception being in the oil and gas sector. The oil and gas sector has a lot of its own difficulties, besides the part that the price of oil is low. The general aspect of investment in some of our oil and gas industries have been reduced. And so that's the one sector that we don't see a pickup that strongly as we go forward. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, just the bottom line there, just to give you some numbers. If you look at GDP at the bottom, which is the measure of kind of total production in Canada. So for 2020, the fall in GDP for Canada, we're seeing it at minus 5.5%. So it actually fell quite a bit. And that's really the difficulty. So that's the part that we want to try to stimulate the economy to get it back from that. Want to put that in perspective. A 5.5% is an enormous fall. It's a very large recession here. At the same time, given how much, you know, we had closed down things and everything, there really is a certain resilience that the economy has shown through this process, and especially businesses being creative and finding ways to keep on functioning despite all the challenges they face. As we go into 2021, we're seeing the beginning of the year as this negative growth, but despite that negative growth, overall growth for 2021, we're seeing it at 4%. That's very high growth for Canada kind of coming back in. So that means in the second half, we're projecting very kind of strong growth in Canada. Going into 2022, even stronger at 4.8% in 2022. And then by then we'll have caught up pretty much to where we were before pandemic, and we'll go back to kind of normal growth rates of more about the 2.5% range. Next slide, please. So this is our inflation forecast. So I'll just concentrate on that black line at the bottom here. So as I said, our goal is to try to get that inflation forecast at close to 2%. That's our aspect of how we work monetary policy. We try to stimulate the economy when the inflation is below to try to get employment back and kind of heat up the economy. But we try not to kind of go much above 2% so that people don't lose purchasing power through inflation either. Now we've been quite low in this 2000 period. We're expecting kind of a spike. So you might see the next little while a little bit of spike that's going to come out that people are going to say, oh, inflation's kind of back up to 2. That's going to be a very temporary thing. It's reflecting basically that oil prices, yes, especially gasoline prices, fell a lot in March and April last year. And just by the mechanics of things, it'll look like inflation's kind of gone back up as some of those oil prices go, gas prices go back up. But our really measure of inflation is it takes until 2023 before we're back to our 2% target, which is also another way to say that's when we think it'll take for the economy to get back to using most of its capacity, which means kind of getting most people back to work. Next slide, please. So again, the summary, I've kind of said most of these things. So we had a hard year, a decline of 5.5%. We're predicting 4% this year and 4.8% next year. Those are high growth levels. As we go through this, a lot of things are pulling up that growth. Consumption's a big part because a lot of people have managed to save. Housing's a big part because interest rates are quite low. Exports should be doing better because the US will be doing better. Why things are going a bit better right now, obviously vaccines is really central to that whole part. Now, regardless of that, there will be difficulties kind of looking at the long run. There's actually going to be restructuring. You know, we've gotten used to doing different things. For example, you know, we shop a lot more online. So obviously brick and mortar shops are going to have more difficulty than the ones that well adjusted to online shopping. There's things like this. We don't know how much people are going to go back to travel as before. Is it going to be more restricted? So there's certain things that we're thinking about restructuring. But our bottom line is we think by 2023, that's how long it'll take for really getting the economy back to normal. So next slide, please. So that gets me to some of the risks we see. So that was kind of saying on average how we see things. And when we look kind of going forward, well, there's some risk in kind of everything I've said here. Obviously, why we put the big arrow at the top here is really kind of indicating that the major risk is really still the pandemic and the vaccines. That's really what dominates here. You know, if we have slow rollout and everything, well, all this kind of nice forecast we've been making for kind of going forward is not going to happen as quickly. But it relies on a kind of decent rollout of the vaccines. Again, if the pandemic's longer and we have more containment measures, that's going to make things look not as good. But what could be things that really help even the economy could even go better than what we said? Well, two things that might push the economy even better than what we've been predicting is this part that fiscal spending in the US might even go greater than what we have anticipated and used in our forecast. And that's right now with the Biden administration that's arrived in the US. They're pushing for a very big spending out there. It's not sure if it's going to go through Congress, but it's possible enough that could even speed up things even more and really help exports. At the same time, when I talked about the housing, about the households, a lot of households right now have managed to save a lot during this pandemic. What will they do with that savings? Will they just keep it in the bank? Then that's kind of implicitly our kind of view in here. But if they decide to say, no, everything I've saved, I'm just going to go out and spend, the economy could even do a bit better. There's things on the negative side that we're worried about. The Canadian dollar is getting quite strong. That's something that makes it hard for some exporters. And the other part, which again is related to businesses and some of the people on this call, is we know a lot of businesses are struggling and having difficulty. Will we get into up to now, we haven't had a lot of bankruptcies in businesses. Things haven't looked too bad, but that could turn around, especially if the containment measures stay a long time. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So let me just tell you what we decided. So like I say, at the beginning, I was telling you that how we determine things is every 6 weeks, we determine how we're going to set interest rates. So we had interest rates at 0.25%. We're going to keep them there at 0.25%. And we're kind of giving indication to Canadians of how long that should last. We're really saying we're going to keep it there until really inflation is back to this 2%. And basically when we call slack in the economy, that means unemployed people and unemployed businesses, until that's absorbed, we think that'll take until 2023. So not committing that we'll keep that until 2023, but our projection right now is we'll keep that interest rate at 0.25% until 2023. So these interest rates that you see now should be low for quite a bit of time. The other thing that we do to try to help stimulate the economy when we're at this aspect of very low interest rates like this is to go out and purchase government bonds, kind of bonds of duration of 5, 10, 15, 20 years, to try to move interest rates very far out in in the future. Also, we buy a lot of those bonds right now, $4 billion per week, and we're going to keep on doing that because we think the economy really needs the stimulus right now. But the bottom line is the Bank of Canada is really committed to trying to facilitate this very difficult period by injecting as much money and kind of as much stimulus as it can to try to achieve this full recovery and bring our inflation back to target. So let me finish there. There was one more slide, but let me drop that one and just bring in, because I think we'll be coming to, let me just check time here. Want to be able to have a few questions there, and I think I've been used a bit more time than I expected. Okay, so let me finish there and open it up for any questions.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Michael had a few questions for you. Michael, are you there?
Yeah, but I can't show my video. I'm still locked out.
Okay.
And I've logged out and come back, and I'm still locked out.
Okay. No problem. Well, one of the questions.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that presentation, Paul. And I'm just going to ask the questions, probably all straight once, so you give the time and so on, you can get a chance to answer them. But the key one I have, Paul, is that you mentioned all these indices. The business cycle, the population, the inflation, the unemployment rate, the interest rate, all of those stuff. And I think you did at the back end mention some of the risk factors associated with it. And the key question I had was, what sort of opportunity or challenges is there, as we translate these indices to small business? Why should they care about these indices?
Okay, so the first thing I think you want to care is if you're on the edge of investing or deciding to kind of give up right now on your small business if you've been having difficulty, or do you think we're around the corner and we should pick up and I should kind of keep in? What we're thinking right now, and all the indicators, we try to pick this up and get the best idea of how the economy is going to be moving forward, is we really think that by mid-year this year, things will be picking up very strongly. And for the next 2 years after that, it'll be very strong growth. So if you're in a small business and you've been having difficulty, if you can hang on for a bit more, things will be kind of getting a lot better. At the same time, if you are in one of those businesses that actually has been doing pretty well already and didn't invest a bit because everything looked pretty risky, this is the time where you say, oh, actually the things are turning around, they're looking better. Maybe it is time to go out and invest. We've made the interest rates very low, so it's the time when hopefully you can go to your bank and kind of borrow at quite low rates. And we're actually telling you, if you kind of take those, borrow, these interest rates won't be moving for a while. They shouldn't be moving until 2023. So all that is trying to give indications of helping you take decisions that as you look forward, where we see things going. At the same time, as it was mentioned, Michael, there is risk around there. This is not like a guarantee. If the vaccine is not rolled out properly, if we have other things happening, if containment measures have to be extended, obviously those things will take longer. But right now, given all the pieces of information, we're saying hold on and things. And this is not small. By the mid-year, we're expecting this to be high growth period, and therefore the real potential for growing businesses at that point.
Thanks, Paul. My other question was, as you do what you do and you look at the forecast and so on, is there any specific program that is included in the package for Black-led, Black-owned businesses?
I don't see any programs that are particularly for Black-led businesses as I follow, and I haven't heard of any in particular. I do think, and probably most of you know, the federal government's put out a whole set of programs to try to help businesses, and I'm guessing many people on this call have taken advantage of the CEBA program, which if you haven't taken advantage, you should take advantage. It's basically giving a bit of free money on top of it, giving out a loan, but it's if you can pay it back in time, there's part of it that's forgiven, so it's actually a good program for any type of small business to take advantage of. And but I don't know of any programs that were particularly directed towards Black businesses.
Okay. And my final question, and you may have answered this in the last of the slides that you're showing, is we know in our free market economy, economists have agreed that there is a sort of wave that the economy go through. It's expanding, it's contracting, it's almost like a sine wave. And some business do well when it's going up, and some business do well when it's going down. And it depends on if you're starting a new business or you're trying to sustain an existing one or grow or scale up. It's important to know where on that wave you are. Where would you say Canada is at right now? Where on that sine wave would Canada be right now?
Like I said, that we've gone down to the bottom, we're kind of coming up, and actually I think we'll be coming up quite quickly. So that's exactly that part of figuring out that at this point we're on this moving, upward moving, but not before at least 3 or 4 months. So this is where the first message, when I said there's kind of like this conflicting part. In the very short term, obviously with the containment measures in place, with the second wave in place, that makes the very short run not look very good, but it's not very far out. By 3 or 4 months out of here, we're really expecting a very kind of sharp and important rebound. And so again, if businesses can hang on and make it through there, I think there'll be a good situation. If you're in the capacity to actually invest and thinking about expanding, to take advantage when things are going to kind of come back, the businesses that do have the resources or were able to kind of prepare will be able to take advantage of that period and kind of come back up as the containment measures are lifted. Again, this is depending a lot on a proper vaccine rollout.
Excellent. So we can actually say to our constituents and the community that we serve that it's an excellent time to start business, grow your business, scale up your business.
If you're starting, I'd say start.
Yeah,
well,
depending on the COVID and the vaccine.
That's right. Exactly.
But it's a better time to look at what you want to do now.
That's right. That's right. And like I say, we've kept interest rates low, and they should be low for a while. So if you have to borrow to do that, at least it's not at high rates. And to the extent that our contacts of different things, looking at how bank lending practices are right now, a lot of banks are very open to consider loans. One of the reasons banks are are looking to lend out money is they have a lot of money. When I was telling you that a lot of people managed to save, the banks have had all this savings put into the banks and they're looking to loan it out. So if you have a good plan or something, do not hesitate to be able to kind of go and think and talking to your bank.
Something I didn't ask, and I don't know if you had mentioned it though, was the government debt. Is the federal government in a good position to manage debt?
So again, here, there's a few elements there. First of all, this was a really hard situation. And I think the government did the right thing of kind of going out and spending and helping people support through this process. If we hadn't had that, things would have been a lot worse. And especially when I was talking about the heterogeneous effect on different parts of the labor market, this is how hit. The direct hit was on a lot of low-income people. And if we hadn't had the kind of programs like CERB, this would have been a disaster. We would have had people in the streets like really in an extremely difficult position.
Okay.
Programs have been really helpful, except it's created a lot of debt. But the debt is right now quite manageable, again, because the interest rates are so low. So you're borrowing money at this. So when I say 0.25%, obviously you can't go and borrow at 0.25%. You might be able to borrow at 2% or 2.5%, but the government at this point in time is actually borrowing at 0.25%. So basically it's not paying any interest. That's what's making it possible to do this.
Thanks very much, Paul. Those were my questions, Anton.
Well, Paul, I'm telling I had a few more questions lined up for you, and there's some coming from the audience, but unfortunately we've run out of time. And with that, I'm unfortunately have to
there's one question. Can we just take that one question from the chat, Anton?
Sure.
I sent it to you there, but I can ask it if you'd like. Is the Bank of Canada planning to roll out a central bank digital currency?
So we haven't taken a decision on rolling out a central bank digital currency. This is an issue that we've been studying for quite a few years now. We are preparing ourselves if we feel the need to get one out. Okay, so there's different things that could lead us to figure out that there needs to be one. If we really feel that there's a threat from other countries that, maybe we need a central bank digital currency to keep our currency competitive with other countries, that could be one of the reasons. It's also the case if we really feel that, people in Canada are not well served enough with the different digital offers that they have to pay for things. This is also one of the reasons we might bring one out, but we have not taken a decision yet, but it is something we are looking at.
And with that, listen, I definitely thank you. Paul, unfortunately, we got cut a little bit short today. We had a few challenges. We're going to have to bring you back. I think you were able to share good information that allows people to more strategically plan for what's going forward from a small business perspective, from people from an industry and sector. So I think we have to bring you back at a later time. Unfortunately, we ran out of time today. But to everyone that's here, to our treasurer, Michael Pinnock, thank you very much. To Deputy General Paul Boudry, we thank you so much. We thank you for attending today. I also want to thank our sponsors, which is RBC, HSBC, and the Ronald Reed Estate. For everyone else, this was the second of 13 programs. We will be continuing the same time next week. Next week's program will be on legal forms of business and business registration of companies. Other programs include, we have one on tomorrow, Ask a Professional, Black and Thriving in Technology. On Saturday, we have a session called our Community Space, Financial Literacy for Youth and Young Adults. From Saturday between 10 and 11:30. So please, for all high school and university students. We also have on Tuesday evening, Boss Woman, Entrepreneurship for Women. That's on Tuesday evening at 7:30 and 9 o'clock. And let us not forget our Harry Jerome Award in April. We are now currently taking nominations for different awards. Please go to our site, BBPA, to get additional information and start submitting your submissions for going through. With that said, everyone that attended, we thank you very much. We apologize for the challenge we were having earlier on. But again, you know what? When Murphy goes through to try to stop us with the cold, we keep pushing through. Again, we will have to bring you back again. And I think there was really value added to all those that came. Thank you very much. Keep safe. Get home. If for those that are on the road, it's a lot of snow out there. And we'll see you next week. Thank you very much.
And on behalf of the BBP, I'd like to say again, thanks, Paul. I saw you had some challenges earlier. I just want to say it's something that we in our community have to deal with every single day. And even as you see, we here just doing a basic financial literacy, and you see the challenges we have. But you know what? We persevere and you persevere. And as Anton said, we will definitely be bringing you back. Hopefully under better conditions to work with us. Thanks again.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much, Michael. And that challenge was more of an eye-opener for me than anything else. So I'm always amazed about how you have to kind of address some of those issues. And yeah, I'm really happy to have been able to communicate with you today. And hopefully I can come back another time. Thank you.
Certainly.
Last thing, for those in our audience, by all means, please come through and check out, because we'll be sending a follow-up feedback at some point later on. And as in terms of registration for this program, it is a 13-week program, but after the third program, we are going to stop in registration. So please, where you're interested, let your colleagues, let your friends know, tell a friend, telegraph, tell somebody that we're coming through, and the BBPA is here to support you. Thank you very much, everyone. Be safe, and see you next week.